our group that Virginia started. This was 4 years ago now. We put together a short film where everybody got to contribute to the script, almost like a TV staff, where everybody had different drafts that they put together. And so I actually took that and turned it into like a screenplay, but it was, what was it, 8 pages? So it was like not a big job.
Right.
And, but I mean, it was the same.
8 pages is one day of shooting
Yeah.
in television.
Sure.
One day. And once that machine starts to crank, it's 7-8 pages a day, every day for a year on a show like Deep Space Nine or Elementary. Basically 5 days, 5 days a week, 40 weeks a year for Elementary, and 45 or 46 weeks a year for Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, first off, congratulations for wrapping up Elementary. That's a major, that's a long run for
it was a great
network
run.
show. Yeah,
that was a really fun run, and it was really good people to work with, and the head writer was great. We had a great cast, great crew. TV, that's the other thing about TV is like TV is a team sport, right? I mean, for TV, it starts with the writer's room. It's the head writer, like basically the head coach, and then a basketball team of players, each of which, you're each going to get a script or two a year. If you're a high level writer like I am, you're going to supervise the lower level writers to take some work off the plate of the head writer. And then it's all teamwork. It's all agreeing on the story together as a group, or working it through whatever the process that their head writers put in place to break the story down. But you've got to write stuff that fits the voice of the show, that works for the actors. The actors get a say too. You've got 200 people on stage. Well, maybe 100 people on stage to make these things happen. And so it all has to be shootable, and it all has to make sense to scheduling and locations and budget. So it really is like, I feel like writing a screenplay is like running a marathon by yourself, and doing a television episode really is much more like playing a football game, Not because in addition to the players on the field, it's like just a giant, a football team is a giant organization.
I actually heard it was somebody compared it to like jumping on like a moving train and trying to do that without breaking your legs. And then not only doing that, but running to the front of the train, getting in there and taking control of the train.
That's for the writer. It kind of is that a little bit, I mean, look, if you're on a staff and the staff is well oiled, like you're not having to run to catch the train. Like the whole point of the staff is to like get everybody on the same page, make sure everybody understands what's happening, make sure that the story's broken in a way. I have like a weird, I'm sorry, I'm not like a metahuman or something. I just have a weird sunlight shining on me.
It's okay. You get some sun. That's good. We just have wind here.
It's wind. It's fall in Los Angeles. It's like, 65 degrees and beautiful out. So actually it's a little foggy tonight. So yeah, I think that was the biggest shock to me coming in because I have a master's in screenwriting. And so I think the biggest shock to me coming from academia and coming from like writing on my own and writing feature scripts on my own, and coming into the world of television was how it was really about executing the vision of the showrunner, how much it was a team sport, and then just the pace. Pace is just really, really fast. And that hours are brutal. I mean, not on every show all the time, but like the worst I ever had was when I was running a show and I was running set and doing rewrites and working in post. So I was working 100 hours a week. I was working from crew call in the morning, and that drifted. So we'd start out at 6 a.m. on Monday, and then we'd wrap at like 7 p.m. on Monday. I'd go home and do writing for a couple hours, and then crew call would be at 8 o'clock in the morning. And by the end of the week, crew call was at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you were shooting until dawn on Saturday, and then 10 hours of writing on the weekend days each. So that was That's how you get 16-hour days, 5 days a week, and then 10-hour days. It's a little light 10-hour day on Saturday and Sunday.
See that's something we were kind of talking amongst ourselves about that, where like we have that luxury. It's like, well, I can put the script down and work on it, next week, or I have writer's block, and I don't really feel like writing, and I want to know like what kind of like, what do you do besides the pressure of the job itself? What are your methods for pushing through, because you have to get the job done. You have, like you said,
And
you
you
have
just
100
do
people
it.
depending.
You got to
Yeah.
do it's got to get done.
Yeah.
There's no excuses. I feel like sometimes writer's block is I'm tired and I'm bored and I don't want to do it right now. Or, I don't know what the next scene is. Like one of the big or what the structure of the scene is. One of the big benefits of television writing is when you start writing, you have a fully approved outline of the episode usually. And so a lot of those writer block issues are taken care of. Like you don't have to worry about scene intention or like how the scene is going to end or how the next scene begins, because you already have the roadmap, right? So now you're executing the plan, and that helps a lot. I also find sometimes when I really am not feeling it, just skip to a scene you want to write. Like if you have a well-structured outline, what all 30 scenes are going to be. If you're not feeling like writing scene 20 right now, write scene 25. Like there's nothing that says you have to do it in order. You can do a whole character's through line sometimes. Let's all write all these character scenes because this is the B story, or this character has all these family drama scenes or whatever. Let me write those tonight. Obviously you have to do everything eventually, but that's one of the things is don't constrain. Have a good outline. Like good outline, 99% of the time, if you have a good outline, you're not going to have writer's block. You're not going to run into a lot of the problems because your outline's going to already have all that stuff. And you're going to have worked it all through when you're not feeling the kind of time pressure and when you're not feeling that you're having to deliver perfect, that your prose and everything has to be perfect. You're doing the outline when you're loose, you're figuring out all the structural issues, and then you've got the outline as a roadmap. That prevents a lot of problems right there. And then feel liberated to write what you feel like you want to write right then. If you don't want to write the drama scene and there's a comedy scene you're in the mood for, go for it. Eventually you have to do it all, but do it in whatever order you want,
So is it something like you pick like the easiest stuff to do and get that out of the way, and then it gets harder and harder as you go along, or you try to do the hardest stuff first?
I generally do it in order. Like I generally don't have the issue of having to like jump ahead. I have occasionally, but I think when I do to jump to something, it's usually the most fun and interesting scene, not necessarily the lightest scene or the easiest scene, but just one that I'm feeling creatively pulled by. Like, in a procedural, a lot of times you have like a lot of scenes are just sort of like mechanical scenes where you have to accomplish a goal. Sometimes it's more fun to write the scenes that don't have those kinds of goals, where it's like a character scene or a funny bit or whatever. And so it's fun to jump to those, or sometimes sometimes in the mood to write the big action sequence. So I'll just do that. But I think it's liberating. I feel like having an outline is incredibly liberating because if you have a roadmap and every stop along the way, exactly where you're going to get gas, where you're going to eat, you got your whole cross-country journey mapped out, right? You can have confidence in going like, all right, well, let's skip ahead a couple steps, do that stuff. I'll come back and do this stuff. I'll go see the Grand Canyon after I go to, Vegas, because I eventually I'll assemble them in the proper chronology, and it's fine. It's just like shooting, right? You never shoot something in order, or almost never. You shoot it in the order that is convenient for production, and then you edit it together later. So there's nothing wrong with writing in the order that is convenient for the writer, unless, and this happens in TV sometimes too, your boss is like, write act 1 for me tonight, because I want to read it tomorrow, because then I'm going to rewrite it. And then you can be working on act 2 while I'm working on act 1. In that case, you're writing act 1. There's no way around it.
Yeah. So I saw the. I think out of everybody, I'm the big Star Trek nerd here. so I saw the Deep Space Nine, the documentary of What We Left Behind, and how you guys kind of reunited the writers' room for that, and basically it did seem like it was a very linear kind of thing where went through what happens Act One, Act Two, and breaking it down. So
Yeah.
in the case of a show like that where you're on staff and you're assigned a script, so once you have your 2 weeks by yourself, locked in your office.
2 weeks. Sure.
Okay, a week or
but yeah, whatever time you have. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So after you do that and turn it in, I mean, I know because you've worked on a variety of shows. So what is that like to basically turn your script in and know that most of what you have written isn't going to even survive the next draft, or if the showrunner takes over and they want to, give it a polish, how do you deal with having your words changed and all that? Because like most of us, we write and or direct,
right,
our own films, so we're not used to having things changed by other people. So what's a good way to deal with that?
Well, that's where the team sport of it all comes in, right? Your job is to write whatever your job is to write. I mean, I've been the head writer, and I've also been the guy just handing stuff to a head writer and walking away. I've also been in the very privileged position when I was on Deep Space Nine of being essentially the writing partner of the head writer. And so even as a staff writer or story editor, being able to sit there with Ira and rewrite everybody and like basically share final pass on scripts. It just depends on the show. It depends on the showrunner. I think I've been blessed, and like most of the time when I've been on a show, if I hand in a script, what's going to be shot is going to be pretty close to that script. 75, 80%, 90%, 95%, or even 100% will be my work at the end of the day and my words. But if you have a showrunner who wants to do the rewriting, it's their show, man. Like your job on a television staff is to make the showrunner's vision come true and to make their life easier. That's it. That's the job, and to do what you're asked to do by that showrunner. And so, if you can't handle that, then that's why you write novels or do your own movies, right? And I've written novels. It's great. They're all my words. There's nothing changed, and the actor says it exactly the way I want, and all that other kind of stuff. But that's not television. That's not the way television works. And so if you're in the game, you're in the game, right? If you want everything to be you all the time, you play tennis, or you bowl, or you golf, but if you want to be on a football team, then you got to know that, like, sometimes your job is going to be to block, and
that's another good analogy.
You may never touch that ball. And there's guys who never touch the ball, but the game can't, the team can't work without them. So,
that's good. So what, like the other part of the question that I had was, because you have a showrunner that has their vision, but you also have, in a lot of cases, actors who really want to have their input. And, because you've worked on a lot of different shows where you have a lot of different degrees to which the actors give feedback or input, or you get to interact with them. I know on the Star Trek shows, the writers basically, I don't know if you were forbidden from the set, but they basically didn't want you around,
Yeah.
For that.
But they also did the scripts word perfect. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
The trade-off for that was they did the scripts exactly the way we wrote them, so we didn't even really need to be there.
So I just wondered if, getting that feedback from the actor, because I know the old, cliche of, well, my character wouldn't say that. I don't know how much that applies to some of the different shows you worked on, or has it been like a fruitful collaboration with some of these actors?
Ideally,
you don't have to name names.
No, it's ideally it is a collaboration. I've been very blessed, and I've worked with some terrific actors, and and like Johnny and Lucy, like I mean, freaking Johnny would memorize giant chunks of stuff, and Johnny was the lead on Elementary. Lucy, obviously, Lucy was watching, and they were terrific. But yeah, they'd have issues every once in a while. They'd be like, I don't really understand why I'm saying this, or I don't know why my character would say it this way. Or I don't understand the intent of this scene. And sometimes it's like, look, they have to play it, right? They, as one actor said, and I will use a very bad word because he used it, but like, you can write this, but I'm the cunt who has to say it. and you know, he's right. It's got to fit in his mouth. It's got to come out of his mouth. And this is a guy like, we had a great relationship, but we also had a giant fight on set once over some stuff. But you know, it's a collaborative relationship, and it can be anywhere from think about, like, you're working with you've got a coworker who has a really important job, and ultimately, like, maybe they are even like the face of the company. Well, you got to make them happy, right? It's part of the job too. Part of the job is like figuring out how to do that. And every actor is different, and some are easier than others. But look, the thing to remember, I'm gonna get out of the way. There we go. Carol Connor got Norman Lear fired from All in the Family. At the end of the day, it's way easier to replace the writer than it is the actor, especially after a season or two. It's very difficult to replace an actor because the audience sees the actors. Audience doesn't see the writers. So they don't care. The audience doesn't care they care about their people on the screen. They're invested in that face. They're invested in that guy, that girl. They've been following their story for 2 years. They want to see where they go. So the actor has all the cards after a certain point. So it's not just part of the job. It's a necessity that you have a good relationship and you make them happy. And that's less true in features, certainly. I mean, like, writers had no power in features, but like, if you shot a short film, like, if you've got an asshole on set, what do you got? Like 3 days with them? You can get through that. If you have an unhappy actor, you can get through a day or two of that, But in a movie, you've got to get through 3 months with them. In a television show, you've got to get through years with them. You've got to make that work. That relationship's got to work for 5 years. If you're all lucky, 5 to 7 years, 8 years, whatever. And so you just got to figure it out. You got to figure out, just like any time you're working with someone else, you got to figure out a good working relationship with them,
So I was going to say, I'm going to go back in time a little bit here. So you got your big break with Star Trek. You had your sale to the Next Generation.
Yep.
And so I actually did this. I did the same thing for Voyager. I actually submitted through the open submission policy. I submitted 2 scripts for Voyager. I didn't have any luck with that, but I mean, obviously you did. And so another thing I wanted to discuss was, what is it like? One of the big things that we need to learn about is the pitching process and how to sell a story. And I know you've
right.
taken probably thousands of pitches from
right.
writers in your time.
It's an important part of the job that people don't really teach, but it's like, you got to put on a little show, I tend to write, I write them out ahead of time. I rehearse them, I do them in the mirror. I mean, I treat them as little performances. And so, I've got if I have visual aids, I've got those ready to go. I know where they are. I know how to trigger them if whatever the deal is. I've got my pattern down. I've got my speech down. I know the order that I'm going to pitch things in, and I hopefully have it memorized enough that I'm never going to look at my piece of paper. And that's part of that's just the sales presentation. I don't know, if anybody works in sales, but that it's kind of what it is. It's a sales presentation. You're trying to sell the idea. So you're trying to pitch them the sizzle. You know, you're pitching them some fun scenes, some grabby moments, some great character moments, maybe a snippet or two of dialogue, the basics of the plot. But really in television, people are really wanting to hear about character and how the characters are emotionally involved, that kind of thing. That's for mostly for pilots are what I pitch these days. But for an episode, it's kind of the same thing. I mean, for Star Trek was a unique situation in that they had a lot of people coming in who were completely off the streets, basically, pitching them. And so, you know, I only pitched them 2 episodes at a time when I was pitching them. A lot of people pitched more. But mine were very well worked out, and I pitched them out, and they seemed to like them, and they finally bought one. And then there's this continuing process of pitching once you're on the show. If you have an idea, you have to be able to pitch it in the room. You have to be able to express it to your boss. You have to be able to do it economically, like it should be done in the least amount of time possible. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to monopolize the room for a half an hour trying to explain your take. It's got to be like, here's what I think in 2 minutes, and boom, boom, boom. You know,
sort of like the elevator pitch.
Yeah, I mean, for a television show, I mean, that pitch is going to be like 15, 20 minutes long at least for when you're pitching a television show. When I was pitching my episodes to Deep Space, to Next Generation, I probably overdid it, but I was probably taking 20 minutes to pitch an entire episode of television. I was probably pitching too much and too much detail, because I learned later that really what they're looking for those kind of things is the nugget of the idea. Like, they're really going to respond to like Data, you know, Worf in a Western, and Data takes over, and, you know, that's what people are interested in. And so, yeah, that would be what I would say is like kind of getting it into that sort of sharpness and practicing it. That's the biggest thing. Most people don't practice their pitches, and it shows. So practice it and get it in your head, you know, and memorize it a little bit.
So did you have a question, Virginia? I know you were messaging me.
I saw something about going to festivals and stuff like that. Obviously, I don't go to anything right now. It's COVID. But no, I don't really do festivals or conventions. Most of the time, I just don't do them because I don't have time. When you're on a show, there's no time to do that stuff. I also don't really get invited to them for whatever reason. So, you know, I would certainly consider anything I got invited to. But the last couple times I did get invited, to be fair, I had to cancel because I couldn't get there because I had work. When you're on a show, it's kind of all consuming. And you really don't get a lot of time off to go do like a festival for the weekend or whatever. And if I'm going to take time off, I'm going to take time off to go do something with my wife, so she can actually like see me and remember that we actually have a relationship. Is that meeting time true? That 8 minutes and 35 seconds I'm seeing up there?
I think so. I'm sorry, my headset is literally falling off my head here.
Usually it extends it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
They usually do.
Yeah. Does anybody have any other questions about the writing process? Like I've been talking too much, so I'm gonna let you guys.
I got a question. And I kind of wrote this down. With a show like Star Trek, it's basically a new story each week, right?
Yeah.
And then, but there's also an overarching plot most of the time.
Yes.
As well. How do you guys determine which episodes like go where, or have you ever like written an episode idea and then waited a couple seasons to like fit it in somewhere?
I've certainly pitched episode ideas that took a season or two to sell and figure out where to slot them in. On Deep Space Nine, we had 26 episodes a year, so we didn't like do too much worrying about where to put something in. We just figured we'd get to it eventually. What we put the most thought into was like, if it was a good story, let's do it, and then the B story can carry the B story carries the serialized elements, right? So the A story, no matter what it is, even if it is part of the big overall arc, you know, sometimes the A stories carry the overall arc, and that's fine. But if it doesn't, it's the B story that's going to carry it. And so you just find those opportunities to fit that into continuity and make sure it makes sense with what came before and what came after. The same thing on Elementary. like the A stories never carried the season arc because they were always standalone mysteries. The standalone arcs were always in the B stories. Prodigal Son, same thing. Now, when you do a more serialized soapy show like Star-Crossed or The Gates or some of these other shows that I've worked on, then it's really all about like you have to break the season almost. The first thing you almost do is break the arc of the entire season, and then you break the arc of every character for the entire season, and then you start thinking about the individual episodes and where they might go, and then you shape the whole season into one big story. And that's a different approach than something like Star Trek or Elementary.
Cool.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Question?
I'll
I
go
have
again.
a question. Oh.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dre.
All right. So as a professional writer that's working on TV, I know you already said that you're pretty busy, just with what you're currently working on. Do you find time to write at all just for your own personal? And if you do, like, what kind of things do you work on at this point?
I mean, it depends on the show. I'm not on a show right now because of COVID. So now I am just writing my own stuff. And when I'm not on a show, that's what I'm doing. I just finished a spec pilot like a week ago. But when I'm on a show, it's hard. It's very hard to find time to write on to do anything else. I will occasionally, depending on the show, have time to do stuff. When I was in Elementary, I sold a novel right as I got onto Elementary that I had already written, and I wrote it during the strike. And they wanted a trilogy. And so over the next 3 or 4 years on Elementary, I found time at night and weekends and stuff like that. And I wrote 2 more books and finished out the trilogy. So now it's done. But it's just if I'm going to do a side piece of writing, it's got to be something I'm super passionate about, but you should always be writing something. Like even I should always be writing something. If I don't write something for a year, my agents are gonna be like, "What the hell are you doing, man? We need material." So it never stops.
Well, that's something I was going to ask about because, like, back in the day with the open submission policy, which was, like unheard of about, a writer that didn't have an agent being able to pitch a script to a TV show is,
Yeah, that's never going to happen again.
Yeah. It's
those
really
days
unfortunate, yeah.
That was Star Trek only.
Yeah.
I mean, and that was it. I don't think that's ever going to happen again. It's just like even in the days of Star Trek, there was an army of like professional readers and lawyers that made that work, and it cost hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, to be honest, to run that program. And I think it was important, and I'm glad we did it. It's not how I came in actually, but it is how like a lot of people got their start in the business, including like Ron Moore and Renee Echevarria and Brian Floor and Gabby Stanton, and like the list goes on and on and on and on and on of the people who got their career start because of that.
That's what I was going to ask about that. If you had an agent when you first started and you were pitching.
So what happened for me was I was in film school. I got a master's in screenwriting. The second script I wrote came in second in a big screenwriting contest called the Goldwyn Awards, which doesn't exist anymore. But when you won the Goldwyn Awards, they would print the winners' the names on the back page of Variety in a full-page ad. So it was kind of a big deal. Like your name was on the back page of Variety, and there was a story inside about it. And so off of that script, I got an agent, and then that agent represented a different writer on Star Trek, and that's how I got my meeting. Because I'd written this big science fiction movie that almost got made, almost got bought. It fell through. But that script, I used that script as a sample. They read it enough that they said I could pitch. They liked it enough that they said I could pitch, and then that was it. So for me, it was my agent who did all of that. And more these days, that's your manager, your agent is who's going to get you that first job. It's just the way the world is. Kind of need that person out there to sell your house.
So I know you've done a lot of sci-fi, DS9, Andromeda, 4400. I'm looking through your IMDb right now.
Alphas, Resident Files.
Yeah, a lot of sci-fi, a lot of genre
Yeah.
work. Is that something where other other networks look at you and think that that's all you do, and like how do you
Yeah.
like how do you?
I
how do
mean,
you
until
stand
I got
behind-
it,
beyond
until
that?
I got elementary, that they didn't think I could do anything but science fiction or fantasy. So that's the jobs I kept getting. Now I got elementary, and now they think I can do science fiction, fantasy, or procedural. They're still not interested in buying like a family drama for me, probably. But look, I also sold features. Features wise, I've sold an action movie. I've sold a historical. I've sold a bunch of different things. Like, it's a bit of a pigeonhole. Whatever job you start, that's kind of what they're going to think of you as. That's just the way it is. Like, it's easier for people that way. Like, you just came off of Grey's Anatomy. You want to work on The Good Doctor? It's kind of like that. Whereas if you come off of Grey's Anatomy and you're like, I just came off of 10 years on Grey's Anatomy, I'd like to do Star Trek, I mean, you might be able to do it, but it's a harder sell, and that's just the way the business works. They work with what they know, and it's a lot of cover your ass, Anyway, less than 1 minute. Anyone else?
I'm wondering if we're extending this or not. If it's I think Virginia's working on that right now.
What do you think of the USS Callister episode of Black Mirror? Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it. I honestly the world has been such a dire and dark place that I haven't really been that interested in Black Mirror, because it's like often very fucking dark, and I just don't want to deal with it.
It's a pretty light episode compared to the rest.
I should probably see it. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of the Orville, or there's a lot of stuff out there.
Okay.
But yeah, I hear it's fun. I should probably watch it. Hill, who was on Elementary, came out of Steppenwolf Theater, and so if you can get to a place that does a lot of really good live theater, I mean, not that there is any right now, but New York again, but that gives you Chicago too, right? If you don't want to move to the coasts. There is work in Atlanta. There's work in New Orleans. But if you're Canadian, there's work in Toronto and Vancouver. But like, you're going to get a lot more chances at stage work in New York if you're a theater actor, if you're serious about it, and you've got you're good on the boards, as they say, and you can get up there and do a play. People get noticed that way for sure, in New York especially, less so in Los Angeles, but it happens in New York. I mean, who the hell knew who Josh Gad was until Book of Mormon, right? But just to be brutally honest, it's not going to happen for you in the Midwest, probably, except for Chicago. But Chicago, like in City, Steppenwolf, there's a lot of people who come out of those places. Los Angeles, if you're a comedic actor, Groundlings, you can take classes at the Improv, you can take classes at Second City, you can get on show, you can get into shows. I mean, my wife did a sketch class, and one of the actors in her sketch class who did her sketch 10 years ago, 2 of them are on shows, now. Sunita and Parvesh. Sonal? Yeah, Sonal. I can't remember her last name. And Parvesh. Yeah, Parvesh. They both got jobs on shows, sitcoms.
Very nice.
So it's not impossible. It's a hard road though, man. And you gotta come with ready to have a second job and put your ego aside and be willing to just drive Uber or wait tables or whatever bullshit you got to do. Dog walk. I mean,
Not so fun stuff.
Not so fun stuff. I got to be honest. Actors' lives are hard, and they get a lot of rejection. And when they get rejected, it's in person, which, at least when someone rejects me, it's just my fucking script. It's hard. It's a hard thing.
Well, it's interesting because one of the things we're trying to do around here is sort of grow the local film industry. There's a little bit of local things going on Cleveland, Columbus, Detroit, but
Sure.
Yeah, it's nothing on the scale of New York or LA. So just trying to make things happen here, just so people can kind of gain the experience to to get out to LA or New York. And
Look, I
it's
think
tough. It's really
doing
tough.
a bunch of short films and getting your face on camera and writing and directing short films is great. And these days, there's YouTube, and you can get things on there. And there are other paths these days for not just for performers, but for writers too, where people can like go onto YouTube or Instagram or whatever the fuck, TikTok, and blow up, and then that's a path too. Like, it's a legitimate way to do it. It's different. That didn't exist at all when I started. Like, there was no that was it. So, if you're a comedian, get up and do stand up, get out there on the circuit. Like, there's a lot of ways to go. And I think it's great what you guys are doing. And I think that it's the access is a way better. Look, I'm meeting with, I wrote a feature, and like, there's a director, he's from freaking South Africa, and he directed a bunch of local movies in South Africa. And he like read the script and was like, hey, I think I can get this made. And I think I know how to do it. And South Africa is not a giant film community, but he managed to get some movies made. And, you can do local, small, Bottle Rocket, right? You guys can direct Bottle Rocket. You can make Bottle Rocket. It's just be a genius. But you know what I'm saying? Like Rushmore, there are definitely movies you guys could make locally that wouldn't cost like all the money in the world. And certainly with the world of shorts and YouTube, there's more access that way than there used to be.
Yeah, just make it all character stuff and less special effects. And
well, if you can do the special effects and do something flashy, people love that shit too. Like, that's basically District 9 was that, there are ways to do that stuff and get people excited, but it's hard. Like, this is a hard business to get into. Like, there's less people in the Writers Guild. There's less people working at any given moment in the Writers Guild of America than there are in the NFL Players Association, I think. So, we make less money, but our bodies don't get beaten up as bad. So that's good.
That's something I wondered. Like, obviously you've been doing stuff for a long time, and that's usually not the case. Where somebody might pitch a script and sell the script and work on a show for a year or two. It's like it's rare to have that longevity, and working on all these like long running shows. So it's like.
Well, I've had two really good gigs and a bunch of other gigs that were less great. 2 long running really good gigs. That's 10 years of my career. And then the other 18 years has been scrambling to shows that lasted 1 season or shows that I was only on for a season or 2. And that's, not atypical. That's kind of like, you got to also be willing to have no job security and, save your money when you're making it, and then spend the money that you've saved, like what I've had to do my wife and I have had to do for the last 9 months. We're living off of savings and residuals right now. And that's just the way of the world right now. But that can happen in a good year, normal times when it's not insane. That stuff can still happen. You can still just be like, I can't get a job right now. It's been a year, and so you're always having to hustle. So there's no security at all. That's for sure.
So as far as like the next year, do you see the industry kind of restarting back to normal? Or I know they've been trying to start productions back up in a lot of ways, but it's it's been hit or miss. Do you think it's going to
fits and starts?
Yeah.
I think we need a vaccine. And I think we need 60% of the American people to take it, and it has to be 90% effective. And then we can get everything back to normal. But filmmaking is a physical labor intense unionized job, right? It's like a factory. And so it has a lot of the same issues and constraints. And so to keep it running, you've got to do a lot of testing, and it slows everything down, and the process takes a lot longer and is more expensive. I think it's going to be 6 to 9 months. I'm optimistic in saying that in 9 months, the film and television business will be back to normal. But I think that's optimistic. Could be optimistic.
Fingers crossed.
Well, look, if you get a vaccine, a functional vaccine in the next, let's say 2 months, like say in January, there's a vaccine that they can start giving to people that works, right? So the first 10 million doses are going to frontline workers. And rightly so, right? They're going to go to medical professionals, people in essential businesses. Hell, freaking barista. It's more important to give the barista at Starbucks a shot than me. Because that barista is seeing 500 people a day, And if she gets sick or he gets sick, it's a fucking nightmare, right? I see one person a day, And once television gets back up and running, then I see 10 people a day, at writer's office, When I go to set, there's another 50 people that I'm working with in a closed environment with no windows and all recirculated air. So we just, it's just we gotta get enough vaccines out there. It's probably gonna be mandatory if you work on set to take it. I don't care whether you believe in vaccines or not, or you're afraid of mercury poisoning or what. If you want to come on set, you're gonna need one, and you're gonna need proof of it. But hopefully, if all that happens, maybe by worst case, this time next year, things will be back to normal. The problem is pipeline, though, right? Because this is a business of a pipeline. So you have all these scripts now that are sitting there doing nothing, right? And those scripts are going to get shot. All the pilots they bought last year, the pilots they're buying this year, they've got to make those things, before they even think about buying more stuff. They've got to get the shows that are already on the air up and running before they start thinking about making new ones, or you know what I mean? So there's going to be it's going to be a slow ramp up. It's not going to just happen overnight. We're just boom, we're back to, and there's there's not going to be a lot of originals on TV this fall. January, there'll be some, but a lot of shows got reduced orders. I got laid off on Prodigal Son because their order got reduced and they couldn't afford me anymore. So I was in New York supervising my episode on March 13th when everything went to shit, when the NBA shut down. I was in my hotel room watching an NBA game and they fucking shut down the NBA. And I was like, oh, no, this is not good. Went into work the next day and everybody on the set was like, they're shutting down this show. They're shutting down this show. When they're going to shut us down? They shut down my episode. One day of shooting in, they shut it down and flew me back to Los Angeles and then fired me. So, it's going to take a while. It's going to take a while for the damage to be undone.
Well, so I won't keep you too much.
I'm good. I've got till 4:30. That's my slot.
Well, I was just going to say, if you have any other advice for, people like us who are trying to find a way to be productive during all this downtime, because obviously, we can't produce anything ourselves. Right?
No, but you can write. You could produce. You'd have to have one other person. but you can definitely write right now. You can definitely record if a performer. You can be on YouTube. You could be recording YouTube videos with. People. I've seen some people blow up pretty big on YouTube or TikTok or whatever, and they're using the cameras that you guys are using right now. They're not going for quality camera. They're going for fun, original content that people can get interested in, talk about interesting shit, show some, makeup tutorials, 600,000 followers, I don't know. Not for me, but I think that there's ways to be productive even in all the craziness. And certainly you can be writing, it's a great time to write a feature film or a spec pilot. That's what I just did. I'm going to write another one starting in December. And then when that's done, if I don't have a job, I'm going to write a feature. And so, my wife just gave me page notes on the first 11 pages of my new pilot that I have to.
That's feedback.
Yeah. There's a lot of marks on these pages.
Yeah, I think the same as industry, there might be at the end of this a supply chain issue, and there'll be the need for much more material. Be busy writing.
Honestly, the issue, like I said, is that I think there's going to be a glut of material. I think there's going to be a lot of fucking scripts out there. That's what happens after the strikes too. But there's a lot of them. doesn't
Sure.
mean you shouldn't throw your hat in the ring. I'm just saying, like I don't know what demand will be like. I think demand will be normal and supply will be high. But I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? But there's nothing. Still, you should still be writing. You know, one chance in 10,000 and one chance in 20,000. I mean, what?
I'm an optimist. What can I say?
No, I'm just saying, like, realistically, like, that's the odds of probably getting a feature spec made, you know?
Mhm.
But at that point, like, it's a lot. You might as well, like, you're writing yourself a lottery ticket, you know? That's what you're doing. And you might as well, like, why not? If you can spare the time from homeschooling kids and all the other crazy stuff that are pulling everyone 18 different ways these days, anyway, I would say just always be writing. That would be my advice anyway. And even if it wasn't these kind of crazy times, if you want to be a writer, you need to always be writing. That's it. Like, it's that simple. Like, what's the Gladwell thing? 10,000 hours for expertise, right? So that's like 10,000 pages, you know? And like, that's what I wrote before I got a job. I wrote 10 feature films when I was a student at UCLA. That's 120 pages each, you know? That's 1,000 pages total. And then I rewrote them, you know, I rewrote every one of those. I probably spent 10 hours on every page by the end of it all. I spent 10,000 hours writing scripts before I got my first job. So, I mean, and it's not uncommon for people to come to Los Angeles to be writers and be here for 10 years before they get their first job. So, you know, if you do the math and they're always writing, they're getting there. There was another thing that a teacher of mine told me in film school is like, when you decide to write your first script, let's say that year, 100,000 other people decide they're going to write a script. When you finish that first script, you're down to like 1,000 or 2,000 people who finished that. Of those 100,000 people that decided that they were going to go for it, if you finished your script, you're already ahead of like 10. You're already in the top 10% for sure. Like, let's say it's 10,000 people finish their scripts. Write your second script, half those people are never going to write another script in their life. They're just not going to do it. And so now you're down to 5,000 people. You write your third script, 2,000 people. Fourth script, 1,000. Fifth script, a few hundred. Sixth script, a few dozen. By the time you write your 10th script, you're the best unemployed screenwriter in the country. Then you just got to get lucky. You know?
How has Final Draft becoming widely available changed the market over the years?
When I told that story originally, it was 1,000 people who decided to write a script that year. Now the Final Draft is available, it's 100,000 people. That's, I mean, it's just easier. The bar is lower. People know that television is written. Freaking when I was a kid, no one even knew that television was written. No one could name a television writer. If you put a gun to my head at 15 years old, maybe I might have been able to name Larry Gelber, but probably not. I probably wouldn't have been able to. Oh, Gene Roddenberry. Okay. I could have named Gene Roddenberry. Maybe. With a gun to my head, I don't know. I probably would have freaked out and not been able to name anyone. People know about television writing a lot more than they used to. They know that screenwriters exist a lot more than they used to. That people are aware that that's a job and that it's a good job if you can do it, you know? People were not aware of that when I started out. It wasn't a thing that people even thought about. And even in the writing circles, people were focused so much on features. When I was in school, everybody wanted to be a feature writer, even me. I didn't even think about television. I can tell you that everybody who made it, except for one guy from my screenwriting class, they all went into television and they went in early. And that was the key. Like, because television is like a writer's medium. They need writers more than they need them in film. They need a lot more writers and they need them to work a lot harder and faster. And ultimately they run the show. So yeah, that's television for now anyway, is where it's at. It may all change. It could all change in any minute. Who the fuck knows?
Yeah, and back to your YouTube comment about just creating and putting content out there or doing something to be creative. I know David Sandberg, who's a director, got his start. I've watched a lot of interviews of him, and as a director, he and his wife just did shorts and he did VFX. And he had so many, he's always had these huge numbers of YouTube followers from all
Yep.
of his shorts. And then they just called him from Hollywood. He had a couple of meetings and it was weird. And then he moved into America and, he lived in Hollywood for a while and was kind of struggling before he did Annabelle Creation. I think that was his first one. It might have been may have been something else, but
Right.
so like his whole start was from him creating and putting stuff on YouTube and stuff like that. So I just hearing
Yeah,
that from you as
absolutely.
well just means a lot.
Hold on, that might be my wife calling. Hold on one second. I'm just gonna.
We don't want to take up too much more of your time. We'll kind of wrap things up.
Yep.
So, I mean, I just want to thank you for joining us and giving us some kind of hope for the future as writers.
I hope I gave you hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe.
I mean, a little scared straight and a little bit of hope at the same time.
There you go.
Yeah,
Gotta be
always give
tough.
you feedback, yeah.
All right, guys. Well, happy to do it, and good luck with everything. And stay healthy and stay safe, and hopefully we'll all be in a better place in a few months.
Thank you. Same to
You
you.
too. Thank you
very
so
much.
much.
Take
Thank you
care.
very much, Robert.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
See you.